Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I was 14 when I asked for a camera drone for Easter instead of makeup or clothes. Not a cheap toy one, an actual quadcopter with GPS, stabilized gimbal, and first-person view. I'd saved up from babysitting and cleaning out old tech gear in my neighbor's garage. My mom just laughed like I'd asked for a tattoo. At brunch that year, in front of a table full of aunts and cousins, she said, "Emma's just going through a tomboy phase. You know how girls get." She passed around deviled eggs like she hadn't just embarrassed the hell out of me. I sat there with a knot in my stomach while everyone nodded politely and changed the subject to Alex's JV football stats. That was 15 years ago. My name's Emma. I'm 29 years old. I live in Columbia, Missouri, about 10 minutes from the house I grew up in. I never got out, not the way they wanted me to anyway. My brother Alex, he followed the family script down to the letter. State school full ride, football team, business degree. Now he's a regional sales VP for some telecom company, raking in bonuses and calling himself a numbers guy. He gets his teeth whitened and wears the kind of watch you never take off in front of relatives with credit card debt. Meanwhile, I stayed local, turned my garage into a workbench, and started building aerial systems for environmental survey. I taught myself avionics off Reddit and YouTube, built my first custom mapping rig by 19, ran my own simulations by 21. Nobody cared. Family gatherings turned into performance reviews of Alex. Every time he walked into the room, people lit up like he was handing out scholarships. I got polite nods, vague smiles, and the same damn questions. "You still doing your little tech stuff? You figured out what you want to do long term?" What's the market like for drones? Quick note. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. Nobody knew how to talk to me. I wasn't married. I didn't have a title. I didn't move out of state or buy a house in some trendy suburb. I didn't have a cute story to put on Christmas cards. I had schematics, solder burns, and a 6-year-old truck full of tools I couldn't afford to replace. And the older I got, the clearer it became. I wasn't going through a phase. I was just inconvenient. That Easter, Mom passed me a slice of carrot cake and said, "I miss when you used to wear dresses." And I didn't answer. I just took my plate, stood up, and walked outside to check the sky. There was good light that afternoon. I flew. I was 24 when I finished building my first full aerial mapping rig from scratch. Custom frame, thermal sensors, LiDAR integration, the whole setup. I was flying field tests while other people my age were still figuring out how to run Excel. But at the family BBQ that summer, Uncle Dave pointed at the drone case in my trunk and asked, "You still doing that robot thing?" "Yeah," I said, sliding burgers onto the grill. Just wrapped a project with a soybean co-op out in Audrain County. Soil pattern tracking. Might pick up another. "Neat," he cut in, already turning away. "You looking for a real job yet?" That was the rhythm every time. Me trying to explain something real and them hearing static. I'd say NDVI analysis. They'd hear, "She's wasting her 20s. Meanwhile, Alex's big promotion to district director came with balloons, a cake, and a slideshow. I'm not kidding. An actual slideshow in the backyard, with a fold-up screen and everything. Everyone clapped like he won a Medal of Honor. When I passed around laminated aerial maps of the flood damage I'd helped document for insurance assessors, nobody looked twice. They thought it was art. Someone even said, "You've got a good eye, Emma." At that same barbecue, I overheard Mom talking to her friend Marlene near the cooler. She works with drones, I think. Really smart stuff. She said it like she was reading off a label with no expiration date. Marlene nodded politely and said, "Oh, wow, like for weddings." I didn't say a word, just went back to replacing the dead battery on my M600. Dad was no better. His favorite line when people asked what I did was, "Emma's independent." It sounded harmless, but I knew what he meant. Independent was code for, "We don't really know either." One time I tried laying it out. I told them how I was contracting with private farms, real money work, precision agriculture, crop health monitoring, irrigation assessments, pest detection. I even explained the upsell model and how I bundled monthly reports with flight plans. They all just nodded, eyes glazed over. "So, is it like steady income?" Aunt Linda asked, like she was in a job interview. "It's project-based," I said, "but it scales. I've got 2 new clients, and I'm planning to—" "Well," she cut in, sipping wine that probably cost more than my last order of ESCs, "it's good to have a hobby." That hit me harder than I expected. Hobby. like I was building bottle rockets in the garage for fun. I excused myself, went inside, and washed a sink full of dishes that weren't mine. I didn't need peace, I needed distance. Next morning, I sent out 3 more pitch decks to agtech vendors and a vineyard co-op. Landed a follow-up within 2 days. But back at dinner the next week, Mom asked if I'd seen any job postings at the local university. There's an assistant position in the environmental sciences department, she said, cutting into her meatloaf. You'd have benefits. I'm not looking, I said. Alex jumped in. Hey, nothing wrong with having a backup, right? You're smart, Em. Just maybe build some structure around all that hustle. It wasn't said cruelly. That was the worst part. He genuinely thought he was being helpful. Sure, I said. Structure. Then I went home and worked past midnight, writing a script to auto-process thermal imaging across seasonal time-lapse datasets. I wasn't trying to be stubborn. I was just tired of defending something no one wanted to understand. The next barbecue, I left the drones at home. Figured it'd be easier, but then someone asked if I'd given up on that drone stuff. I didn't even answer. Just walked to the cooler, cracked a seltzer, and kept my back turned while Alex gave a toast for his sales team's quarterly numbers. No one noticed I was gone until the sun started setting. I watched it alone from the driveway. Clean light, clear skies, no wind. Perfect flying conditions. By Thanksgiving, I'd accepted my role, fly under the radar, smile when spoken to, and don't expect anyone to ask questions they didn't want real answers to. Our parents' house was packed, folding chairs jammed into corners, cousins shoulder to shoulder at the kids' table, even though half of them could legally drink. The air smelled like gravy, perfume, and forced small talk. Alex walked in like a campaign poster. Pressed slacks, a gold tie clip, fiancé on his arm. Carly, perfect hair, perfect nails, always smiling like a woman with a calendar full of brunches. She immediately started passing around photos of their new condo in Scottsdale. Rooftop pool, valet parking, skyline views. Everyone oohed and awed like they'd never seen a tile backsplash before. I was in the kitchen laying out my imaging samples, high-res flood damage maps, NDVI overlays from a crop assessment in Oklahoma. I even printed one on mat board so my Uncle Jerry, the one who grows soybeans outside St. Louis, could actually see the detail. He walked by without stopping. I cleared my throat. Hey, Jerry, I brought something you might... Talk to me later, Em. Gotta ask Alex something. That was how it always went. Alex was holding court in the living room, one hand in his pocket, the other wrapped around a glass of Cabernet. He was talking about managing 15 reps across the Southwest like he was running a battalion. Mom beamed at him like she'd birthed Steve Jobs. Dubai's next, he said, like it was no big deal. Sales conference, then maybe extending it for a few days. Carly's never been. Oh my God, Aunt Susan gasped. You're going international now? I mean, yeah, Alex said, laughing. It's global business. You go where the revenue leads. I didn't roll my eyes. I just turned back to the side table where my maps were quietly collecting condensation from someone's abandoned seltzer can. Mom passed behind me and nudged my elbow. Say something, she whispered. About your little drone business? I took a breath. I've been doing some environmental scanning. Mostly crop analytics, but I'm starting to branch into... The room went dead quiet. No one interrupted, but no one nodded either. Alex took a sip of wine. Carly smiled tightly. That's great, sweetie, Mom said quickly, then turned back to the couch. Now, what's the time difference in Dubai? I stood there, holding a heat map of a drought zone in Iowa, and felt like I was speaking Klingon. Uncle Jerry finally walked by again. Hey, Em, you still doing those drone videos? They're not videos, I said. They're data runs. Imaging sets, mostly multispectral or LiDAR, depending on... Cool. Still flying those toys around, huh? I slid the mat board back into my bag. Yeah, still flying. Later, while the family played cards, Carly cornered me in the kitchen. We were thinking, she said, setting down her wine. You could maybe do a flyover video for the wedding? You know, scenic shots, overhead angles. You'd be so good at it. I don't shoot weddings, I said. Oh, she blinked, clearly confused. Well, it's just, with your equipment, we figured it's not built for weddings, I said. It's built for surveying agricultural damage and pipeline inspection. Carly blinked again. Right, of course. She left me alone with the pie trays and the hum of the dishwasher. When we sat down to dinner, I ended up between cousin Mike and someone's girlfriend who kept asking what kind of camera drones were best for vacation shots. Across the table, Alex was explaining his strategy for coaching underperforming sales reps. I didn't say much, just ate my food and refolded my napkin 3 times. After dessert, Mom pulled out a keepsake box and handed Carly a baby photo of Alex. Look at those little cheeks. He always had leadership in him. I stood up, quietly took my bag of imaging samples, and walked it back to the truck. Cold air hit my face. I didn't even feel it. My hands were burning from holding back everything I wanted to scream. I drove home in silence, didn't even turn on the radio. When I got back, I hung the mat board up over my workbench and started writing a pitch email to a hydrology firm in Colorado. Not one word about weddings. I had barely finished the email to the hydrology firm when another came in. Subject line, confidential. Initial inquiry for partnership. It was from a mid-sized energy company out of Houston. They needed aerial inspections for pipeline monitoring, hard-to-reach terrain, thermal irregularities, structural stress points. I'd done 2 similar jobs already. I knew I could handle it. I signed the NDA 2 days later. That was 6 months before Christmas. I'd already registered my LLC 2 years earlier. Skyphase Tech, solo founder, all equipment built and maintained in-house. I was turning in regular reports, paying quarterly taxes, filing maintenance logs like clockwork. But to my family, I was still doing her little drone thing. Christmas came like it always did. Tight parking, overcooked ham, and tension just under the wrapping paper. In the living room, Alex was walking Dad through some new app his company rolled out for remote workflow tracking. Carly nodded along like it was groundbreaking. I sat near the fireplace, scrolling through footage from a test flight I ran that morning over a wooded lot. Perfect thermal resolution, clean imaging. I'd have the pipeline overlays done by Monday. Dad glanced over. Still working with those gadgets. They're not gadgets, I said. I'm under contract with an energy group. Pipeline analysis. He raised his eyebrows, gave a slow nod. So you're doing consulting now. I didn't even bother correcting him, Alex chimed in. You know, Em, if you ever want something more stable, I could put in a word with my buddy over at Westcom. Telecom's booming right now. I'm good. No pressure, he said. Just, it's nice having a team. Benefits, structure, you'd probably like that. Structure, like I was floating aimlessly while he built Rome. I looked at him, then back down at my flight logs. Appreciate it, I said, even though I didn't. He meant well. They always do. That's the part that made it worse. Mom wandered in later, holding a tray of cookies. You still working from home, honey? I have a garage lab now, converted the whole space. Dual screen setup, server rack, test bench. Oh, neat, she said, not really hearing me. Well, if you ever need help with resumes or anything, let me know. I saved all of Alex's. I laughed once, quiet. I'm not looking for jobs, Mom. She just smiled. You never know what'll come along. I did know. What came along were NDAS, invoices, contracts with 5-figure deliverables. None of them involved HR or company holiday parties. After dinner, I brought up some aerial stills from the pipeline job. Figured maybe Uncle Dave would find it interesting. He used to be a surveyor. I flipped open my laptop. This here's a thermal map of a weak weld near the riverbed. You can see the heat variance where pressure's built up over time. We're flagging it for reinspection next quarter. He squinted at the screen. Huh, so what are you going to do with that? I already did it. It's submitted in the report package. They're using it to prioritize site crews. He looked confused. But do you make the repairs? No, I said. I generate the data that helps them decide what needs to be fixed. It saves them thousands per flight versus manned aircraft. Oh, he handed the laptop back. Sounds high-tech. Which is Midwest for I don't get it, and I'm done pretending. Aunt Linda walked by with her wine and tapped me on the shoulder. Don't forget to grab a plate of leftovers. You know, keep your strength up for all that computer flying you do. I shut the laptop. That night, I reviewed the inspection batch again, just to double-check everything before I sent the final invoice. It wasn't just work anymore, it was survival, not the paycheck. The proving it existed. They didn't see a job. They saw a phase I forgot to outgrow. They saw time wasting, potential rotting, adulthood dodged. I saw 6 straight months of paid work, 4 signed NDAs, 2 private clients, and my name on every invoice. But to them, I was still just Emma and her drones. Let them think it. I went back out to the garage, flipped on the lights, and started debugging the relay sequence for my next test run. Contract or not, the work never stopped. The next night was Christmas Eve. The house was louder than usual, voices overlapping, foil trays crinkling, someone in the back arguing about football. It smelled like cinnamon candles and store-bought lasagna, and every single person in that living room had something I didn't. A manager, a W-2, or a Team Slack channel with way too many emojis. Carly walked in with a big gold bag and started handing out monogrammed scarves like she was Oprah. The tag said, "From Carly and Alex," in glittery cursive. People acted like she cured cancer. Alex gave out wine, 2 bottles each, red and white, from a vineyard his company had just landed in their distribution network. "We're scaling West Coast retail now," he said, like that meant something to anyone holding a paper plate. When it was my turn, I handed my cousin Josh a matte black box. He opened it, blinked, turned it over in his hands. "It's a phone case," I said. "Carbon fiber composite, built for extreme fieldwork, shock and chemical resistant." Josh squinted at it. "Huh, cool. Where'd you buy it?" "I made it," I said. "Designed for field engineers. I've been running impact tests for—" "Oh," he cut in. "Right. You're still doing that drone stuff, yeah." Before I could answer, Uncle Dave walked by and slapped me lightly on the shoulder. "Still flying your little drones." I let the pause hang for a beat too long. "Actually, I've been building automated survey models, environmental tracking, remote diagnostics, terrain overlays." He blinked. "Sounds high level." "It is." Silence. Someone cleared their throat. Carly smiled like she was hosting. "Well," she said, smoothing her sweater, "at least you're staying busy." That one landed clean. I felt it in my chest like a punch with padding, soft enough to seem harmless, but it still left a bruise. I didn't respond. Just sat down on the edge of the ottoman and watched everyone unwrap the rest of their wine and scarves. Mom floated by and whispered, "Why didn't you do something festive like Alex and Carly?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean mass-produced and overpriced?" "Just something people recognize," she said under her breath. I stared at the fireplace. "Right. God forbid we challenge the gift status quo." She gave me that tight smile I knew too well and went to refill the cider. I stayed quiet most of the night. Every time I tried to join a conversation, someone pivoted to something more relatable: holiday travel plans, work bonuses, Peloton workouts. The closest I got was when Aunt Trish asked if drones could be used to find lost pets. I mean, technically, but that's not really what— "Oh," she said, interrupting herself. "I saw a TikTok where a dog got rescued by one." And that was that. Later, while everyone crowded around the tree to take group pictures, I slipped into the kitchen to grab a soda. I leaned against the counter and scrolled through diagnostics from my last field test. Thermal readings looked perfect. I adjusted the relay timing by 3 seconds and logged it. Behind me, I heard someone say, "Emma's just always off in her own world." I didn't turn around. The tree lighting started, and everyone gathered in a tight circle, singing off-key like they were in a Hallmark movie. I stood near the edge, smiling just enough to not get questions. They didn't hate me, they just didn't know what to do with me, and maybe that was worse. The music faded out. Carly raised her glass. "To family," she said, "and new beginnings." Everyone echoed it back. I raised my can halfway. I didn't toast. I didn't speak. I just looked around at a room full of people who measured value by how many PTO days they had left and whether their company offered stock options. I finished my soda, tossed the can in the bin, and stepped outside into the cold. The air was sharp and clean, quiet for once. I pulled out my phone and checked the upload status on a real-time topographic run I'd submitted earlier that day. 98%, smooth as hell. I smiled, pocketed my phone, and went back inside like nothing happened. As soon as the dishes were cleared, the tradition kicked in like clockwork. Coffee, dessert, and everyone sharing their next big steps. Like life was a checklist, and we were grading each other's progress. Alex started, obviously. He held his mug like a CEO on a podcast. "There's talk about moving me into a VP slot by summer," he said, voice casual, like it wasn't the most predictable line in the room. Could mean relocating to Denver, but the comp package is huge. Everyone nodded and hummed like a choir. Carly jumped in next. "We've also been talking about freezing my eggs, just to be prepared." Aunt Trish clutched her pearls, literally. You two are so responsible. Then it circled to me. Of course it did. Aunt Linda leaned over with that well-meaning face that always turned into something worse. Any exciting developments, Emma? I took a sip of my coffee. A few contracts in the works. Oh, she asked, smiling like I was a toddler reciting the alphabet. Oil and land management clients. I've been testing an automated survey model. Scales real-time imaging into predictive overlays. Should speed up response times for field teams. Blank stares. Not one person asked a follow-up. Sarah, my cousin from Cincinnati, piped up from across the room. She'd just made manager at a national gym chain and hadn't shut up about her quarterly bonuses all night. You know, she said, swirling her wine, you could have done something big with your brains. I laughed, not loud, just a single breath through my nose. Could have. She didn't smile. She just looked straight at me. Yeah, like actually big. Corporate, real structure, not drone stuff. The air shifted. Everyone got a little quieter, like they were waiting to see if I'd blow up or let it pass. I leaned forward a little. You manage trainers at a gym franchise, Sarah. She raised her eyebrows. And I bring in 6 figures, with benefits. And no guessing where my next paycheck comes from? I don't guess, I said. Do you even have insurance? She asked. Carly tried to laugh it off, but Sarah didn't stop. I'm just saying, at this point, it's kind of sad watching you waste your potential. Nobody said a word. Not Alex. Not Mom. Not Dad. Aunt Linda reached out like she was about to pat my arm, then thought better of it. I stood up slowly, not dramatic. Just done. I'm gonna grab some air. Dad looked down at his mug. Carly pretended to check her phone. I walked past the tree, the perfect scarves, the untouched phone case I designed that was still sitting in the gift pile, like an afterthought. In the hallway, I heard Sarah behind me say, she gets so defensive. It's not an attack, it's concern. That word, concern, set my jaw. Concern is when you quietly pull someone aside, ask if they're okay, offer help if they need it. This was something else. I stood by the front door, arms crossed, staring at the wreath like it had answers. They thought my work didn't count because it didn't come with a logo on a coffee mug or an office with windows, because I'd built something they couldn't Google, because I didn't beg for permission before I went all in, but I didn't say any of that. I just stood there, breathing through it. Let them think I was wasting something. Let them think it was sad. I'd seen what they called success. Meetings, debt, burnout dressed up as discipline. No thanks. I walked back in just in time to hear Carly asking Mom about their plans for Aspen. Sarah didn't even look at me. Alex raised his mug halfway. Nobody asked if I was okay, which was fine. I sat back down, reached for another cookie, and didn't say a damn thing. I had just taken a bite of cookie when Sarah stood up. She held her wine glass in the air like she was making a toast, but her eyes were locked on me. Her voice cut straight through the room. You're 29, no job, no plan, no partner. Silence. Everyone's been nice, she went on, but let's be real. No one stopped her, no one even flinched. Carly adjusted a throw pillow. Aunt Trish sipped her tea. Uncle Dave nodded, actually nodded, like she was reading minutes from a board meeting. Dad looked down at his hands. Mom just stared at the floor, face tight like she was bracing for a storm that had already landed. Sarah tilted her glass. Not done. You're turning into that person people whisper about after they leave the room. I didn't move. She kept going. You pop in with your tech talk and weird little projects, and everyone has to pretend like it's going somewhere. But it's not. It's sad. No one told her to shut up. No one said, that's enough. They just let her keep going, like she was finally saying what they all wanted to. Alex cleared his throat. You know I've always tried to help, Em. He looked at me like he pitied me, like I was a sick dog limping through traffic. You don't have to be stuck like this, he said gently. You're smart. You could have done anything. The worst part. He believed that was kindness. I didn't argue, didn't defend myself, didn't pull out contracts or show them profit margins or explain NDAs for the 100th time. I just said, I get it. That was all they needed. Everyone relaxed, as if I'd finally admitted it, finally accepted that I was the failure in the family, the weird one, the one who got left behind. Someone clicked on a Bluetooth speaker. Music started, Christmas jazz. Just like that, they moved on. Sarah sat down like she'd just performed a public service. Carly leaned into Alex, whispering something with a forced smile. Mom stood up and started clearing cups like she didn't hear a thing. I stayed frozen. I looked around that room and knew I could win awards, get a front page write up, even build a damn satellite. And it still wouldn't matter to them. Not unless it came with a 401k and a LinkedIn banner. They needed me to be behind. That's how they kept their own lives looking ahead. Cousin Mike tried to hand me a plate of pie. You good? I shook my head. Not hungry. He walked off without a word. That was the part that stuck with me. Not the judgment, the agreement. No one had to say it. Their silence did the job. I walked into the kitchen and leaned on the counter, my palms pressed flat on the cold granite. The hum of the fridge, the faint sound of laughter from the living room, a fork clinking against a plate. It all blurred together. They thought I was lost, floating. Some genius kid who never cashed in. They didn't see work. They saw wasted energy. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the last report draft I'd queued up that morning. Full-color overlays, predictive slope failures, hazard radius projections. It was all there, in black and white, backed by data. I zoomed in on one of the heat maps, bright orange where the land had shifted, where my model had caught the instability weeks before the crew even got on site. Stuck, Alex had said. They wouldn't last 2 days in my shoes. Not one of them could build what I'd built, and they sure as hell couldn't survive betting everything on it. But none of that mattered to them. I didn't go back to the living room, didn't grab my gift bag. I slipped out the back door, got in my truck, and sat there in the dark. Outside, the windows glowed warm with family and comfort and ignorance. Inside, I opened my dashboard folder and started drafting a summary for a client who did understand what I was building. They wouldn't ask about health insurance. They'd ask for flight path accuracy and ROI. That was fine by me. Let Sarah play manager and Carly freeze her eggs and Alex manage his 15 reps. I wasn't stuck. I was building something none of them could even see. I had just saved the final draft for the slope hazard report when my phone buzzed once. Notification from TechFly. Didn't open it, just figured it was another newsletter blast. I leaned my head back against the seat and stared out the windshield. The house glowed behind me like it had answers. I was done chasing approval in rooms built to ignore me. Then I heard the front door creak open. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Dad standing on the porch, holding his phone to his ear with that half-apologetic body language he always used when talking to clients during holidays. Hey, Jim. Yeah, I'm still at the house. No worries. Go ahead. He started pacing a little. I could see him frown, glance toward the driveway. Wait, what? His voice tightened. There was a pause. Then he looked straight toward my truck. Are you sure? He asked. Our Emma. I didn't move. He turned slowly and walked back inside without hanging up. Not even 10 seconds later, the living room went quiet. I could tell without hearing it. No voices, no wine glasses clinking. Just this sharp, still hush. Then a muffled voice from the hallway. Dad's. She's all over Bloomberg right now. TechFly just dropped their innovation index. Skyphase is at the top. $3.5 billion valuation, post-merger. My fingers curled tighter around the steering wheel. Carly's voice way too high-pitched. What's Skyphase? She built it, Dad said. That's her company. She built what? I stepped out of the truck and walked toward the house. By the time I opened the door, the room looked like someone had detonated a phone store. Everyone was staring at screens. Cousin Mike was reading out loud. Skyphase Technologies named leader in automated aerial surveillance. Federal infrastructure bids pending. Founder Emma Roth developed proprietary flight intelligence model. Sarah stood frozen next to the dessert table, wine glass dangling in one hand like she forgot she was holding it. I walked in slowly, coat still on, and looked at Dad. He was pale, like blood-drained pale. He held his phone out toward me like I was supposed to say something. I didn't. Alex lowered his phone, still blinking at it like it was lying to him. You merged with Helio Labs. 6 weeks ago, I said. Carly looked from her screen to me. But you never said anything. Yeah, I said. Nobody ever asked. That landed harder than I thought it would. The room flinched. Mom was sitting on the couch with her mouth slightly open, hand still resting on an empty mug. Emma, she said, blinking. Why wouldn't you tell us? I looked right at her. Because every time I tried, I got interrupted by scarf season or someone's quarterly bonus. Sarah still hadn't moved. Dad sat down slowly, phone still in his hand. This, this model, he said, like he was trying to catch up. They say it's the one everyone's scrambling to replicate, that it changes how we manage surveillance, logistics, even border control. Yeah, I said. That's the one. There was another pause. The kind that comes after a car crash, where no one wants to be the first to speak. Then, weirdly, it was Carly who broke the silence. She turned to Alex and whispered, "We were going to ask her to film the wedding." Alex didn't respond. Mom finally stood up, walked toward me slow, cautious. "Emma, can I introduce you to someone at Dad's firm? They'd like to talk partnerships." I stared at her. She didn't flinch, but she didn't push either. I turned to the group. "So, is this where I get a cake now?" No one laughed. Uncle Dave muttered, "Well, damn," under his breath. Sarah finally sat down, hard, like her knees gave out. She still hadn't spoken. The silence kept stretching, phones lighting up with article shares, screenshots, and quiet little holy crap whispers. It was like someone had flipped the power breaker on the entire family tree. All that polite dismissal, all that concern turned judgment, evaporated, like it never happened. But I remembered every word. Cousin Mike was the first to break the silence. He held his phone like it was radioactive. "Local woman builds aerial mapping empire." He read out loud, slow. "Sky phase to lead federal infrastructure contracts." Aunt Linda leaned in over his shoulder. "Federal." She repeated, like the word was in another language. Across the room, Sarah just stared at her lap. No wine glass now, no comments, just silence, like the air got knocked out of her. Alex blinked at his screen again. "You merged with Heliolabs." I nodded. 6 weeks ago. His mouth open like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. He just looked back down at his phone. Mom, still standing beside me, looked like she was watching a stranger. Her voice cracked a little. "But you never said—" "Nobody ever asked," I said, sharper than I meant to. That one hit. She looked down. Carly leaned toward Alex and whispered, "We were going to ask her to film our wedding." The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Dad finally looked up from his seat, his voice low, almost cautious. "Emma," he said, "can I introduce you to someone at my firm? They'd like to talk partnerships." I tilted my head. "Partnerships?" He nodded. "They've been looking at defense-adjacent analytics, drone capabilities, real-time data processing. What you've built, it's serious." The same man who once called me independent like it was a bad diagnosis now wanted to loop me into a handshake deal with his retirement fund buddies. Uncle Dave muttered something again under his breath, but I didn't catch it. Cousin Josh, still holding the phone case I'd given him, finally realized what it was. "Wait, you made this?" "Yeah," I said. "Designed it. My engineers refined the build specs before we spun off manufacturing." His eyes widened. "Damn, I thought you ordered it off some gear site." "That's how you know it works," I said. Mom sat down on the edge of the couch, looking pale. "How long have you been building all this?" "Sky Phase was filed as an LLC 3 years ago," I said. "First NDA signed a year later. I've had 5 contracts in energy, 3 in agriculture, 1 in environmental, and the federal bid just closed last week." Aunt Trish set her tea down without sipping it. "You never told anyone." "I tried," I said. "You were all too busy congratulating Alex on hitting his quarterly metrics." Alex shifted in his seat. "I wasn't trying to compete with you." "You didn't have to," I said. "The room did it for you." He looked away. Carly cleared her throat. "So, what happens now? I mean, what does this mean for you?" "It means I'm the CEO of a billion-dollar tech firm," I said. "And you can stop calling it my little drone thing." Mike let out a short whistle. "This is wild." "Yeah, wild that it took a Bloomberg headline to make them listen." Sarah finally spoke. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "You didn't want to," I replied. She didn't argue. The silence was different now. Less smug, more stunned. I could feel it shift. All the judgment, all the snide remarks, the subtle digs. They were looking at me like they didn't know me at all. Because they didn't. I turned to Mom. "You always said I was wasting my potential," I said. "Turns out I was just building something none of you understood." She swallowed hard. I'm sorry, Emma. I nodded once. Didn't smile. Just let it hang. The TV was still playing muted Christmas jazz in the background. Nobody moved. Their phones kept lighting up, notifications popping like fireworks as the story spread. Every few seconds, someone glanced at their screen, read another line, then looked at me like I'd grown an extra head. I didn't need their validation, but watching their faces, that part felt good. It didn't take long. As people started packing up their scarves and half-eaten desserts, the questions came in fast. How did you build it? Where'd the money come from? Who else knows about this? I just smiled. It's been a long project. They hovered now. Same faces that wouldn't give me 5 seconds a few hours ago were suddenly full of curiosity, like I'd flipped into someone worth listening to. Alex cornered me in the kitchen, where the sink was still full of dishes nobody had touched. You could have said something, he said quietly. I looked at him. Would it have changed anything? He didn't answer, just nodded once and ran a hand down the back of his neck. He wasn't used to being out of his depth. Sarah stood by the coat rack like she wanted to say something, but her eyes never met mine. She just gave a small, stiff wave and ducked out without a word. Even Dad didn't have much to add. He gave me this slow, sideways glance, like he was still recalibrating everything he thought he knew. He opened his mouth twice before deciding to keep it shut. I was grabbing my bag when Mom pulled me aside in the hallway. Her voice was soft for once. I'm proud of you, she said. I just didn't understand it before. I nodded. I know. She looked like she wanted to hug me. I stepped back before she tried. Good night, Mom. I walked out without looking back. The air outside had turned colder. I could see my breath fog in front of me as I slid into the driver's seat and shut the door. The silence hit different now. It wasn't heavy, it was earned. I pulled out my phone and opened the TechFly article. There I was, right under the headline, my name, my face. A quote about how Skyphase was rewriting the rules on aerial intelligence. Words like visionary and pioneer were getting thrown around like they weren't talking about the same girl who used to sit at the kids' table with oil stains on her jeans. I leaned back, screen glowing in my lap. Not bad for someone who played with drones. Danto.